Hey folks, we're getting into the longer of the two works of drama that we are focused on, and the Glass Menagerie will be the content for a few upcoming weeks here. So let's take a look at where we are, where we're going, where we've been, all those good things. So we've already completed the poetry paper. So this is a little bit outdated and I just forgot to update this one slide. But anyway, we're going to get into the Glass Menagerie, including talking about ideas for your second presentation. And then, of course, thinking about what is coming next. So a couple of reminders. If you are still working on the poetry paper or the revision for the main project, keep in mind that citing poetry, of course, and quoting or not, those are important things. If you have questions about them, please do reach out to me. All right, so let's talk about the Glass Menagerie. Tennessee Williams is an American writer and was very famous during his lifetime. He won a Pulitzer for A Streetcar Named Desire and Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. The Glass Menagerie was actually before both of those, but was his first major success. He is originally from I think he's originally from my home state of Missouri. Certainly, he was heavily influenced by St. Louis, Missouri, which is heavily featured in the Glass Menagerie. This particular play is what's called a memory play, and it's important to keep that in mind because it is told through the narrator, Tom, and his memory. And as anyone who is a human knows, memories are not always accurate. So we do have to consider Tom a bit of an unreliable narrator in the sense that this play is being told from his memory as opposed to being told from outside the actors and looking in. In terms of the narrative style, it is non-linear compared to some of the other kinds of things. We obviously, as we've moved forward in time, we've gotten even more into non-linear narratives, things told out of order and things, but this was kind of the early days of that sort of thing. You also encountered in this particular production very specific use of music, lighting, and screen projections that would reflect that emotional content. And so rather than realistic action scenes, you would find in this particular production originally the use of music, lighting, actual like projections on a screen to supplement what was going on stage. And that was out of the ordinary for drama in that period. So as I mentioned, this particular play is set in St. Louis during the 1930s, so the Great Depression. It takes place in a cramped city apartment. It is very much a city feel, which is ironic because St. Louis itself it is a major city, but it's also not a city. Um, I've lived there. I lived there for many years, and I even lived in the city proper. And you don't find a lot of these kinds of cramped city apartments in St. Louis itself. Although, hey, who knows? In the 30s, maybe there were more of those kinds of things. But you do have the apartment facing a movie theater. And of course, the movie theater becomes symbolic of Tom's desire to escape. So does the fire escape, which of course is something you see in a lot of city-based drama, whether it's in film or on stage. The fire escape definitely is a symbol of kind of getting away from that tight confinement, but also the emotions, a place to get away. The other thing to keep in mind is that Amanda Wingfield is very much a former Southern belle. So St. Louis, Missouri is an interesting state. I lived there for most of my life. I was born there. So I can tell you that Missouri, most Missourians do not really consider themselves as Southerners, even though Missouri was a Southern state. St. Louis especially is much more rooted in we are part of the Midwest, and not really, they don't really see themselves as a Southern city, even though technically, Missouri was in the South during the Civil War era. But Amanda Wingfield is clearly meant to be from the deep South. She definitely has that kind of Southern Belle mentality that she's better than this, that she deserves better than this, that she should have been, held up on a pedestal like a Southern Belle should have been. And so that really does kind of go against the reality that the family is facing. In terms of the plot, of course, we do have the Wingfield family. Most of the characters are Wingfields. We've got Amanda, the mother, her son Tom, who is, as we said, the narrator. And then we have Laura, who is his shy, physically disabled sister. And of course, it is her collection of glass animals that we get the play's title from, the Glass Menagerie. Um, Tom is very much the central person in the sense that it is his recollection, but you could argue that Laura is the main character because the play is named after her glass collection. Everything revolves around Laura's inability to be a normal person. So the characters themselves, of course, Tom Wingfield is the narrator and a central character, and he is definitely torn between responsibility to his family and escape. The father has abandoned them. And so Tom is also perhaps going to abandon his mother and sister. Amanda Wingfield, of course, clings to her past. She wants to live vicariously through her children. So she wants Tom to be more successful than he is. And she wants Laura to fulfill the role of the Southern Belle and get married and live happily ever after and have lots of babies and be a well taken care of woman. Laura Wingfield, of course, is very shy, very introverted, and cannot handle reality. Certainly cannot handle the pressure that her mother puts on her to be normal, if that's not really the right term, but we're going to use it. And then, of course, we have Jim O'Connor, the non-Wingfield character, who is a coworker with Tom, and he has been invited over for dinner, essentially to be a gentleman caller or a potential suitor for Laura. And of course, what we find out about him is that there's no way that he was going to be a suitor for Laura, and the whole thing is doomed to fail for many, many reasons. So the central themes, there's really kind of four that most people point to. One is, of course, the memory and illusion versus reality. What is real? What is not real? And how our minds and our memories deal with that kind of juxtaposition. Family obligation versus escape, of course. The father has escaped, and Tom also wants to escape. We like to think that we care about other people and that we will stick around and stick it out and support our family and fulfill our family obligations. But in reality, that doesn't happen quite a bit. So there's that. The fragility of dreams. Of course, Laura has dreams, but her mother's dreams are kind of juxtaposed onto hers. So the fragility of dreams are often doomed to fail, especially in this era in modern 20th century American literature. And then finally, you've got the economic hardship because we are in the Depression, but you've also got the idea of social expectation. And something that we still deal with is this idea that somehow every generation should be doing better than the generation before it in terms of economics and social expectations. And that's never 100% been true. This family definitely showcases that. Got some imagery. The glass animals, blue roses, of course, is one of the big symbols that we run into in this play. We've got the typing school, and of course, the idea that Tom is himself a writer, and the fire escape, as we've talked about before. So, with the presentation for the drama, you are going to focus on elements of the Glass Menagerie, and you are welcome to approach it any way that you want to. Most people will focus on the characters and do kind of a character analysis, but you could focus instead on the four themes. There's a lot of different ways that you could approach it. It's really entirely up to you what you want to cover. But I do want you to treat your presentation on this play as kind of helping you pre-write for the drama paper, which of course will follow. And we'll have another lecture about the drama paper in this same module. So keep that in mind. If you have questions about the presentation beyond that, let me know. But I will also be talking about it, of course, during the weekly walkthrough when we get to this point. So enjoy, get creative, and I look forward to seeing your presentations because they are my favorite part.